Good morning, my dear students. A very warm welcome to today's science class. Today we will be taking up the topic increasing and reducing friction. But let us look at what we have done in the previous class. In the previous class, we discussed that the force required to overcome friction at the instant an object starts moving from rest is a measure of static friction. On the other hand, the force required to keep the object moving with the same speed is a measure of sliding friction. Friction allows us to walk, write, put nails on wall, hold things and in many more activities. Friction causes wear and tear and produces heat. So in the previous class, we can conclude that we have learned about the advantage and disadvantage of friction. Friction has both advantage and disadvantage. So there are instances where we want to increase friction and there are situations where we want to reduce friction. So today we will be discussing about how to increase and how to decrease friction. After today's class, all of you will be able to understand the necessity of reducing and increasing friction. The keywords which are used are increase, reduce, friction, oil, grease and spikes. Now, children, I had already mentioned that there are situations where we have to increase friction and why there is a need to increase friction. Sometimes we need to increase friction so as to avoid slipping of objects. How can we increase friction? We can increase friction by making the surface rough. So, we know that when the surface is rough, friction increases and when the surface is smooth, friction decreases. So, we can increase friction by making the surface rough. Now, how can we make the surface rough? Let us take example of treaded tires. So, you can see some designs on the tires and we call those designs as treaded. So, why these treads are present in tire? It is present so that it increases the friction between the tire and the surface on which it is running and it has a better grip on the surface so that there is less chance of slipping and less chance of meeting with an accident. Another example is shoe soles. You have seen that there are patterns or designs on the soles of shoes. So, why are these patterns provided? It is provided to have a better grip on the ground while walking so that we do not fall or we do not slip while walking. Apart from this, we can also make the surface rough by spreading sand. Now, let us assume that some oil has been spilled on tiled floor. Now, how to increase the friction so that we do not slip and fall? So, what can be done? We can spread some sand over it. First, we have to clean the oil and then spread some sand over it. So, since sand particles are rough, it will increase friction. Similarly, you might have seen that weightlifters apply powder before lifting the weight. So, why do they apply powder? So that they can have a better grip while lifting up the weight and there is less chance of slipping of the weight from their hands. Let us take some more example. Brake pads are used to increase the friction between the foot and the brake. Similarly, to increase the friction between the foot and the pedal of cycle, even there the pads are used which are rough in nature. You might have seen in the game of kabaddi, players usually take some soil and they rub on their palm. So, why do they do this? They do this to increase the friction. Now, let us look at how we can reduce friction. At times or there are situations where friction can be deliberately undesirable at times. So, we need to reduce friction. Now, how can we reduce friction? We can reduce friction by applying oil. Some of you who have bicycle, you might have applied oil for proper movement of the cycle. So, it will reduce friction. We can reduce friction by applying grease also. When machines keep on working for many years, the parts of the machines which are in contact with each other, there is wear and tear between these parts. So it can be avoided by applying grease. So it usually reduces friction and the machine begins to work properly. Applying powder. In a game of carom, you might have seen that people apply powder and reduce friction so that the coins can move on the carom board easily. Lubrication. Lubrication is the process of applying oil or grease to reduce friction. Streamlining. Streamline is a specific shape which some vehicles have, and they are designed in such a way that they have a streamlined body which will help it to move very easily. It can cut through the air very easily. So we will be discussing about streamlined shape in later classes. We can reduce friction by using ball bearings also. So how is a ball bearing used? Now suppose let us assume that there are two metal rings, outer ring and inner ring. So the outer ring is fixed but the inner ring is moving. So since the inner ring is moving, there will be friction between the two rings. Now if we place balls in between the two rings, then the friction which is produced will be reduced and the movement of the inner ring will be very smooth. So in this way we can reduce friction by using ball bearing. So we will be discussing about streamlining and ball bearing in detail in the later classes to come. Now let us take up two questions related to this topic. Ice skating is skating on ice for sports, entertainment or pastime. But everybody cannot skate. Why is it very difficult to walk on ice? So obviously we had discussed about friction and the answer lies in the concept of friction. Question number 2. Discuss 3 situations in daily life where friction needs to be reduced. So you need to discuss or you need to write about 3 situations in your day-to-day life which you see around and where friction needs to be reduced. Today's homework is exercise question number 9. So this is all for today's class. Let us now summarize what we have learned. Sometimes we need to increase friction and sometimes reduce it. The sole of the shoes is grooved so that the friction between our feet and ground increases and we can walk safely. The tires are treated so that they can have a better grip over the ground and allow the smooth movement of the vehicles. Brake pads are used in bikes to stop them suddenly from moving by increasing the amount of friction. Kabaddi players rub their hands with soil which help in increasing the friction between the hands and allow them to have an easy grip of the opponent. Gymnasts also apply a coarse substance so that they can have a better grip due to increased friction in their hands. The powder which is sprinkled on the carom board helps in reducing the friction between the board surface and the striker. In this way, the surface of the carom board becomes smooth. Grease is used in bicycles and other motors or different parts of a machine to reduce friction and increase their efficiency. Oil is applied on the hinges of doors so that they can move easily. So this is all for today's class. Thank you and have a great day ahead.